experiences are accepted. Sure.
All set. JJ, you're good?
Yeah, I'm gonna finish. Okay, yeah, but he'll really talk.
Yeah, but
Problems.
experience.
Which
Required.
kids are.
Yeah, this might be to you guys, so just speak to us.
Which kids are possible. So is going on this. Good afternoon, folks. It is 3:30 in the afternoon. Today is Thursday, February the 13th, 2025. This is a meeting of the Johnson County Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee of the Johnson County Board of Supervisors. Good afternoon, everyone. Just as a housekeeping note, if you have something to say, please just be mindful of where the microphones are. We may need to pass microphones. Just want to make sure that everybody on Zoom can hear and participate. With that said, item B is public comment. Is there any public comment for an item not on this afternoon's agenda? Any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to item C, a presentation from the University of Iowa Center for Social Science Innovation, presentation and project proposal for community perspectives on the Johnson County Sheriff's Office and Jail. Good afternoon, folks.
It's going to be given a clicker, I believe. We have a slide.
Might have to.
I wonder if they've got your.
Set a shop on
Okay, yeah, sure.
I can assist if you'd like, but.
No, that's okay. If Cassie, should you come up and join as well?
Absolutely.
I'll scoot.
Or maybe she can just sit.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, that's weird.
Well, I can't see.
That's fine.
Yes, please.
Yeah, on both screens. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to talk through our proposal for how we might be able to assist the Board of Supervisors and your committee assess community perspectives on the Johnson County's office, Sheriff's Office and Jail. My name is Ethan Rogers. I'm the Associate Director for the Center for Social Science Innovation, joined by Cassidy Branch, our manager of our research services. Before I dive into the project, I just want to briefly introduce you to the Center for Social Science Innovation. Our center was recently received approval from the Board of Regents in September of 2024 to focus on the mission to advance, support, and celebrate interdisciplinary social science research. Now, we define that mission very broadly, but one submission that was put in front of us was to collaborate with external partners, assist community groups, assist local government agencies, utilize social science research to address local needs and challenges. And that's what brings us here today. Our director, Mark Berg, is a professor in sociology and criminology, and he reports to the Associate Vice President for Research, Chrissy Navin-Warren, who's a professor in religious studies and also oversees the Oberman Center for the Humanities. In terms of how we reach our mission, we have 4 core priorities. The one that's most germane for today is the survey and multi-methodology research services. So I'm going to talk directly about that. Our team of 5 staff members led by Cassidy provides a range of research services, including project management, survey and qualitative research support, in addition to data access and consultations. I do want to make mention to Dahida Mahatmya, who just recently joined our team through a partnership with the College of Education. I want to acknowledge her as she was integral to developing this proposal for today. Also, we do have a range of past projects, a couple even with the Board of Supervisors. Cassidy and her team assisted on the evaluation of the direct assistance program. Other examples of the ways in which we've done evaluations and data assessments are available on our website. Feel free to take a look on that. What's the website official? It's projects page. So to this specific project, just to give you a little background, we have met with both the sheriff's office as well as the Board of Supervisors to discuss this kind of committee and your mission. And it was set forth to us by Supervisor Green to come in and give a proposal about how we envision potentially assisting your group. So as a first step, we always believe that we want to think critically about how this project can assist you all. So we took a close look at your mission statement. This proposal is developed in that spirit. We've highlighted there the data-informed decision-making with public input, as we see that's where we can contribute the most. And then underlines two components that we were sure to try to include in the proposal development. That is your prioritization of public safety, mental health supports, and community trust, as well as the inclusion of addressing the needs of staff, incarcerated individuals, and the community. So in terms of our process, I am presenting today what we view as a recommendation for a project that may best align with your mission. But what I want to emphasize here is this is simply our recommendation, and then we hope that it opens up a broader discussion. We integrate your feedback, and then we identify the precise parameters of the project. So that could be through a collaborative process, again, in this discussion, but also being responsive to your needs and resources. Then after that, if there's an interest in moving forward, we would develop and sign a formal contract. And then at that time is when the work actually begins, where we start to put the project forward, again, continuing to have communication with all of you, have your feedback as we move forward. So what are we proposing today? We put together a proposal for a mixed mode project, which essentially means there's two components of this project. The first, we're proposing a survey or a poll of a representative sample of Johnson County residents. Why a survey? Surveys are a comprehensive, accessible, streamlined way to get a broad assessment of Johnson County residents' perspectives. And then we also propose utilizing focus groups to get more in-depth, rich data on perspectives. And I'll talk about each of those in detail and really highlight what our team would be able to do for both of these projects. So regarding the survey project, our team is here to help you ask the right questions in the right way, as simply as I could say. Our team would be assisting you on asking questions such as, what do we ask? Who do we ask? How do we ask? And when do we ask these questions? So in terms of what do we ask, our team would collaborate with all of you to develop a survey. Okay, so this would be a conversation with all of you in terms of what you would want on that survey. We have a couple potential survey topics that we can certainly modify. But some could include opinions about the current Johnson or the current sheriff's office and jail, experiences with it, contextual questions about receptions of public safety and so forth. But we can develop those. And most importantly, Cassidy and her team are experts in survey research design. So they would assist you in crafting those survey questions to ensure they're answering or the answers give you meaningful responses, right? You can all be very familiar with, I'm sure at some point you took a survey where the question was, how great is our program? Great, very great, super great, or perfect. We are here to assist you in making sure we're not asking the questions in that way and not biasing the responses, right? In terms of who do we ask? We are proposing targeting about 400 completed surveys, as our best estimate suggests that would give us a reasonable degree of confidence that we have a representative assessment of perceptions here in Johnson County. We would stratify that by geography, meaning essentially we would make sure that we're asking these questions of both Iowa City residents, as well as residents of surrounding areas and the rural areas as well. In our proposal, we've included the option for a dual language survey. It would be English and Spanish, but additional languages could be incorporated. In terms of the how do we ask, we are proposing a mail survey with a phone call follow-up. For such a targeted sample, our best practice is a mail survey and to ensure that we have response rates or adequate response rates and reliable responses. Now, I will note there are other options and I'll talk through some of those and I'm open to feedback and we can modify as we move forward. But this is what we view as the best practice for ensuring you are getting adequate responses. And then finally, when do we ask? I'm going to say now, this is a very ambitious timeline that we put together, an attempt to be responsive to Supervisor Green's request. But it is contingent on a variety of things. First and foremost, simply when that contract gets signed and when the project begins. But if we were able to get that signed before March, we could begin survey development with the intention to deploy that survey by April, have results through May, June, and then we would close out sometime in July with the full results of the survey. In terms of that focus group project, again, just to reiterate, this is the piece where we dive a little bit deeper in terms of the input from community members as well as key partners. Now, the intention here is to think critically about having folks come in and talk a little bit more about the challenges they see, or maybe the support or opposition that they have, the potential barriers to the development, or what is needed as you move forward with your plan. So what we are proposing in our project are 6 90-minute focus groups, 3 of which would be targeted to individuals with unique or relevant expertise and experiences. This recruitment strategy could be, again, in a collaborative process. You would all identify who you would want to be involved in those focus groups, and we are open. We would just need assistance on recruitment there. But then we also propose 3 community focus groups that would be recruited through that survey design. That during the survey, individuals could indicate that they're interested in having a deeper, richer conversation, and then we would recruit from those individuals, potentially curating that so that you have one focus group with perhaps those who are the most ardent supporters of the new office in jail and those who are completely against it. If you wanted to start to dive into what are the concerns or where are the sources of support. In terms of what our team would do, it would help on the participant recruitment. It would help on developing the interview guide. Our team, Cassidy and her staff would moderate and co-moderate those focus groups, of course, transcribe them and give you some thematic analysis of what those conversations, what emerged from those conversations. So in terms of costs, this project in total, the one that we are proposing in our packet, is approximately $77,000. The bulk of those costs are for the survey development and deployment. Of course, then there's the focus group costs as well as our own project management costs, consultation and reporting of our findings. I want to emphasize again, this is we can make this project responsive to what you all would like to see. And we recognize that some of these research projects are cost prohibitive. So there are alternative options. Just as one example, mail surveys are one of the most expensive survey designs because of postage and printing costs. Okay, so there is alternative ways to reduce those costs. And one would be a relatively new strategy, and that's the text-to-web and landline phone survey sampling strategy. The text-to-web, we'll liken this to polling. You all may have gotten a text on to weigh in on a specific survey. That's essentially that methodology. Buy or purchase phone numbers and push it out via that method. There are concerns, though, that would reduce your response rates, and you would likely also have less reliable responses. We can talk about why that is here in the Q&A.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
How recent are your data on the response rate of snail mail type surveys?
Those are the current best
Okay,
practices and responses, so.
okay.
And actually, we can open to questions right now. I'll just have the last note would be that the other option, or another option, I should say, would be to forego the survey entirely and just focus on focus groups. Pun unintended there. But essentially, I just want to emphasize that if we remove the survey, that the cost of the focus groups themselves would increase due to we embedded the recruitment strategy through the surveys. We would have to come up with an alternative recruitment strategy. So the focus group cost would increase. But again, this is just to emphasize that we can modify the projects responsive to your questions.
So would it increase by as much as the cost of the survey?
Certainly not. No,
Okay.
certainly
All
not.
right.
No.
Thank you.
So just to talk through
Oh, there
this
we go.
a little bit more, if we did standalone focus groups, we would probably do a phone type of recruitment methodology. And that's what you're seeing here in the costs that are displayed on this slide. So that's a phone recruitment where we buy a sample of Johnson County and conduct procedures to randomly sample those numbers and then get participants that way.
And with that, any other questions?
Yeah, I'm super curious about all of it. So if you didn't do the survey and you did focus groups only, would you have to increase your sample size? You had like 400 completed surveys before. So if you like,
So if, and that should be noted on here, if we do the focus groups to make sure that there's an opportunity for that rich conversation, usually we limit the focus groups themselves to about 6 participants. So certainly in terms of what we'd be targeting, we would be looking for about 18 folks for the community focus groups, as well as about 18 for the targeted groups.
That's kind of the drawback of not doing a survey. With focus group research, you're never gonna get a random sample of the population. It's usually just not feasible. So that's why we cater a random sampling of the population to get those responses and then use the focus groups to get further in-depth feedback that's not likely from a quantitative survey that you send out.
Just a item on execution here. This committee has no budget authority. So what I would propose is that this discussion, if the committee comes to a consensus and wishes to proceed with these folks and one of their proposals, I would ask that this committee offer that as a report to the Board of Supervisors. Because frankly, we don't have the time this afternoon to take a holistic budget discussion over what our resources are. And so if there is consensus in this group, that would be reported back to the Board of Supervisors. And then we would make the determination at a future work session, work with Ethan to get a contract executed and undertake whatever it is that we determine we wish to do. So I just want to lay down that marker that we don't have to answer every question this afternoon. Hopefully we can come to consensus about how we want to move forward. And then the supervisors will very quickly determine financially whether we can proceed with that. So with that said, questions, comments, discussion? Bill.
My experience with focus groups, I've done a lot in my other life. How do you know you're really getting what they really feel? Many times we'll point out, well, this is kind of top of mind, it sounds cool, but how do you find out what they're really thinking and would prefer?
So there are different strategies that you can use in focus groups to elicit responses. One would be to design the focus group composition so that people are in homogeneous groups, so that people are comfortable explaining what they want to tell you essentially. And we probably have to do some screening questions with whatever recruitment strategy we use to help develop that composition. So for example, if we did focus groups of people who are very supportive versus not very supportive, we would put all the people who tend to be supportive in a group so they're comfortable speaking with each other. And then we would design the questions to essentially saturate the data. So we probe and design questions to get to the underlying deeper meaning.
Thank you. And is the person that you have conducting the focus group, are they able to read the room and shift?
Yeah.
This is what they're saying?
Yeah.
Is there hearing these things? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So with a focus group script, you have 10 broad general questions that you would intend on asking. And then you have some additional probes that you may or may not ask depending on how the conversation evolves. 2 of our staff, myself included, are formally trained in focus group facilitation and methodology. So, and we've been conducting focus groups for clients very frequently in the past 2 years.
Well, I'm all for surveys and focus groups because not only does it help give us information, but it starts to get the word out to the community. And one concern on the survey thing is we learned from the recent conservation fund, we spent a ton of money on mailing. It didn't do much. In fact, people got it, they, oh, cycle that puppy. And I can see it happening. We actually made better hits on social media. Got more responses that way.
So some of the things that we are proposing in the mail survey are intended and proven to boost the response rates. So one of those things is offering a $1 incentive that gets mailed out in a survey mailer. A lot of times just seeing that cash in the envelope will improve the response rate by 5% or so. So current response rates for mail surveys are about 12%. If you offer a cash incentive, it boosts it by about 5%. Additionally, we're proposing a phone call follow-up to non-respondents. So after about 2 weeks of deploying that initial packet, we'd follow up via phone call and ask if they want to complete the survey over the phone, or maybe they need to be mailed another packet. So that will also boost the response rate by another 8%. This is the strategy that we used with the direct assistance program, and our response rate for that, although it was a very targeted cycle, was 41%, which is much higher than our typical mail response rates.
And I'll add, what you'll find is the number of responses sometimes actually matters less than the approach that you take, right? So in terms of the mailing strategy, we'd be looking to try to ensure that we have a representative set of responses, right? So that shift to social media would certainly boost the number of people responding, but there'd be a certain amount of respondent bias, right? Who is on social media, who's actively interested in responding to that survey. And so that's why we want to maintain that mail survey, that best practice for ensuring that we're not introducing additional bias to the responses.
And one last question. There's a lot of diverse opinions on what we're doing. How can you assure you're getting a good sample in different groups and not an overabundance of one over another or just a couple?
That's where the stratification comes up in our sampling procedures. So we have a sample provider who can provide landline and smart cell samples of individuals in the county. And we could use the data that they provide within the sample, such as zip code. Sometimes they have gender, sometimes they have race included. We can use those variables within the sample data to stratify the sample and send out a survey to a group of people who would be representative of the county's demographic makeup.
And have demographics, but maybe not political things.
We can, be very
Or
frequently.
if you just send them to the sheriff's deputies.
That's exactly the concern, right? And that's in terms of the mailing approaches. It encourages that random sample.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
On the back end, after we collect the data, we included a political identification question. We could also weight the data so that the results are more representative of the population.
Okay.
That goes with certain assumptions though, wouldn't it?
Right.
Like you would have seen, I mean, if you were seeing from the responses you got, like red, blue. And red like this and blue went like this. Then if you weight it, aren't you assuming that the other, like if you had equal numbers, that they would be responding like their red, blue cohorts?
So you
I mean,
weight
like,
it
they
based
might
on
not.
the population characteristic. And you apply a proportion to the data. So I'm not very good at explaining the weighting procedures.
Yeah, Mike Boy, our data analytics specialist, does some of the weighting, but essentially it would be benchmarking to the Johnson County population. So the only way we weight it would be something that we would want to have some type of data point that we'd be able to match the sample to that population to improve its accuracy.
And typically we use the American Community Survey, which is the census data, to set our weights.
Thank you. Just a moment. Could we go online, please, Leslie? Thank you for your patience.
No problem. Thank you. I just wonder, is 400 the survey number that you're sending out, or is 400 how many you're anticipating receiving back?
We would target the sample size to attain 400 completed surveys. And that gives us about a 95% confidence interval that those responses are as close to the real response if we were to survey everybody in Johnson County. So the sample size is much larger than that, obviously.
Okay. I just have one comment for people to consider. I think it's great to solicit input, but I think in terms of making the higher level decisions, I hope that the people that are involved directly in terms of the jail staff, the mental health professionals, people who actually work in this space, that their input might be weighted a little bit more strongly in terms of the final decision making than the general public. I think that the general public doesn't necessarily understand all the nuances in this area. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leslie. Rod?
Yeah, I have I guess a question related to all the questions you've been getting, but I'm not sure if and maybe I just need to change the way I'm thinking about this to, rather than focus group, maybe just calling it an informational presentation or something. But I am hoping that at some point groups from this committee or something like this committee will be going out and presenting, and there'll be a Tuesday night in Oxford, and there'll be a Thursday night perhaps with some kind of Latino group, and there'll be a Saturday morning with Rotary or things like that. So do those types of things impact what you're trying to do? Would you suggest that we hold off on that until you're done with what you're doing, or can those things happen concurrently? Do they interfere with each other in any way? If we just view ours as more, give us your feedback, but we take it with a grain of salt, how do you suggest we deal with that?
Yeah, I would say, I don't, unless Cassidy disagrees, I don't envision that being a problem and to be holding those. Oftentimes that is going to be natural to this process, right? That you'd be having these open, and frankly, our approach or our recommendations is how to get kind of that evidence-based assessment of both through the focus groups and the survey. But of course, as a committee, if you want to continue on to have, community groups that is open to all, right? Like the focus groups, again, would be very targeted. That wouldn't get in the way of our design.
I mean, I think we always want to be seeking feedback, but we also, I hope, are going to view that feedback through the proper lens. Hopefully you folks will give us the lenses through which to view everything we hear.
Yeah, and one other alternative component here that we would ask, that this part you would likely want to hold off until after we presented the results. But we could also, whatever the survey is that we distribute for a representative sample, once we have the results and once the project's done, we could also develop a project where we simply provide you that link for that survey, that if you would want to share that on the Board of Supervisors webpage for anyone who wants to share their opinions, right? That, again, it wouldn't be a targeted, it wouldn't be a scientific sample, but it'd give you that opportunity to hear from anyone who wants to share.
Thank you.
Additional questions, discussion? Yes, please. Microphone, if you would.
I have two questions. One with the mailers in the past. What has been your stratification for age that has been responses? Because I'm kind of fearful that the younger generations would never respond to a mailer, and $1 would not convince me to say that. And my second question is it possible to do a random stratified sample of people that have experience in the field? So defense attorneys, prosecutors, sheriffs, police officers, judges. Is there a way to do a sample of, I want to say, people that have more experience in the field rather than just a general temperature feeler of the general public?
So I'll answer the second question first. For this design, we assumed using an address-based sample because that gives us the most representative snapshot of Johnson County, but we can also buy business to business samples that essentially we can purchase phone numbers related to people's occupations. So that is a possibility to target a specific subpopulation. Obviously, we'd have to like calculate different costs because those weren't included here. And then the first question, as far as targeting different age demographics, so you are going to target the age demographics that are consistent with the address-based population. Usually an age variable is included within the data, so we could stratify based on that variable as well. I want to say off the top of my head, there are about 25 variables that come with the data that we could use to stratify. So we could, stratify by almost any demographic characteristic.
So-
And that's kind of where the phone call follow-up comes in as well.
And we provide updates along the way. So if it's clear early on that, the 18 to 30-year-old age group is low in terms of the response rates, we may kind of work together to address that over the course of the distribution. And I also want to emphasize the targeted survey idea. We certainly could build something that might be a route where we think more strategically about if it is a survey about service providers or someone more targeted to this specific question, we would separate that as a unique project and then work with you all for maybe a recruitment email database that we could utilize. But these individuals are probably more likely to weigh in, and response rates wouldn't be nearly as large of a concern.
So I see the focus groups in the survey as really different. And so I think my question and kind of maybe not dovetailing, but sort of with what we just were asked is, what's the purpose of the survey? Is it to find out how likely the public, that this random sampling of the public is to support this if it went to, a vote? Or are we looking to get their feedback, which is what I see as the focus group, their feedback on, how this should be done or if it should be done, like.
Yeah, we would lean on your input in that regard, right? With the survey.
Based on our question.
Yeah, and if we move forward with the project, right, and that to the point of the content of the questions or the topics of the questions would be curated with all of you. If you wanted it to be more targeted about what is the current level of support, or would you want it to be more targeted to what is needed, right? If you move forward with the opposite.
Because, yeah, I mean, what is needed really could come from the focus groups. And, the more variety we have within the focus groups, not within an individual focus group, but among the focus groups, the more likely we are to get, that rich array of input. But the other thing, the questions have to be so precisely worded if that's what you're trying to get. And that's why I think we're getting questions about, people who know a little bit more about what is involved in, what the need is, what we work with this population. Because are we trying to just figure out, should we move forward with a bond or a referendum and a vote on this?
I think we need to find out what that ballot language needs to include to have community support.
Gotcha.
So I think
Okay.
that, we definitely need to be focusing on
That's
that in the questions, and granted, the focus group will give us more in-depth information about those things, but if we only did the focus groups, that would be a very small sample size.
Right.
Whereas the sample size that they said for the surveys gives us that 95% confidence rate. So I really think that they're both an important piece of the project.
Thanks, Mandy. That's helpful.
I also was curious, just in terms of the split with the survey and the focus groups, kind of to the gentleman who was standing up here, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Max. Just with who you're trying to reach and how we reach them. It's always a good question, right? But I think, in terms of weighing the importance of what is the language for the bond and how is it being perceived versus input on the actual design barriers or, like what that will look like. I would weight, since we're talking about weights, more towards increasing the number of focus groups because you can get a little bit more in depth. I'm not saying get rid of the survey, but I think that something along the modified project cost of, having a reduced survey or something that includes a web presence would maybe stratify it a little bit more, get a little bit more mixed, still include survey so you can get some hot takes on what people are feeling in terms of mental health and, those kinds of things. But I'm much more interested in the input side of, more community focus groups or more provider and, the mix of folks, kind of to Leslie's point, like, so we can make sure that we're getting people who are in the system, who work in the system, definitely gathering that while really having some focus groups in the community as well. And I know we've talked about having, what Rod was just saying, talking to groups in the community, that is something that I think the committee really needs to think about what that looks like, because you're going to want like a packet basically for somebody to go and facilitate a community. I mean, I am also a trained facilitator to manage a conversation in the community. Facilitating about a jail is probably going to be intense, right? So you're going to want to just also have some thought around if people from the committee or others in the county are going to be holding these additional focus groups or input sessions. And I say that as a both and, then we need to also think about what is that, because there are going to be resources that are going to be needed for that too. I appreciate, the professional, like, let's have something. We should definitely, in my opinion, hire folks to do that. But I would definitely weight it on what is the input side of things for the actual infrastructure and system. And then, certainly also to Bill's point about getting the word around, it does help to have those kinds of things circulating and, online and in communities. But those are just some of the things, because I think it is a balance. Like, what are we trying to accomplish with a proposal like this at the end of the day?
If I may, Ethan, to put just a little finer point on some of these queries. At 400 respondents for a 95% confidence interval. How deep can we cut that? Where I'm guessing to realize much cost savings, we're going to end up with a considerably lower confidence interval. I'm not asking for a dollar amount, but just a rough estimation.
In terms of moving away from the mail approach or in terms of reducing the number of completes?
If we were, and V, help me out if I'm misunderstanding what you were saying. If we said we wanted 200 survey respondents, but 6 or 7 focus groups.
So I think what I would suggest in terms of, correct me where I'm wrong, rather than going down to the 200 completes, because I think your uncertainty would go quite high in terms of it actually being a representative assessment. Instead, I would think about just the alternative method, still working towards the 400, but it would just likely be not only it'd be lower likelihood of getting there, but we would still try. But then also in terms of like the reliability of the responses. So the big thing that we had discussed internally is through the text to web strategy, for example, we're going to be purchasing phone numbers. My number is not a Johnson County number, right? So I would not be even included in that phone sample because it would be based on Johnson County. So yeah, thinking about that piece of it, the reliability of the responses that you're getting, your Johnson County voting population goes down. But it'd certainly be an option, and that would be most likely, it'd be more thinking about this route where we do that text to web and landline. The landline strategy is for, that would be the age bracketing strategy.
So for the text to web portion, we want to purchase a smart cell phone sample where we could target people from 18 to likely 65, because the older groups don't respond to text and web surveys as often. And then we supplement with a landline phone survey to target the 65 and older group. So that's kind of how we would stratify that type of project.
And that mode could still be utilized for the recruitment for the focus groups if you wanted. Community, you know, and we could increase the number of focus groups for communities, or if you wanted targeted focus groups, I should say.
Came in late, so I missed some of this. So is the timeline for this is around the summer?
So the timeline would be doing this around the summer. Is that, I was just kind of looking at the timeline, trying to
There it is
figure
right
out,
there.
okay.
If you wanted to start right away, we would probably want to field survey starting mid-April. It would take probably about 8 weeks to field a survey and finish up data collection. With mail, you get people turning surveys in up to 6 months later. So we try to get the majority of the responses in that 8-week period.
And the focus groups piece then would be coming more in the summer because it would be utilizing the survey responses.
Okay, yeah, because I guess just one kind of thought that I have just kind of surrounding this sort of project as a whole is like in talking with the community already about some of this, a lot of people don't have an opinion yet because they don't know what it's going to look like. And so if you ask them, they say, oh, yes, yeah, maybe we do need one, but what? I don't want to agree to anything unless I know what it looks like, because I don't want some big overinflated thing, or, you know, they are concerned about the costs. And so just because people know I'm on this, I've had a lot of conversations. So I was kind of curious around the timing, because I could see a lot of people not really knowing how to respond because they don't know enough yet about what it is, that they don't want to go like one way or another. So it's just, I guess that's why I was kind of curious about the timing.
I
of
think
like,
that's questions more like what the community values versus like, we want to build a $4 billion jail. I mean,
Yeah, I would
for
again
the,
need.
for the service.
So if we move forward, what we would do is in the next meeting, we would discuss with all of you what the questions, you would want those questions to look like. And to be responsive to this point, I think what you could envision is there's a lot of different survey design strategies, and one could be almost a matrix is the word that's coming to mind, but essentially different conditions, right? And then assessing level of support, right? So you could put a lot of these questions that you're all having in this discussion on that survey itself to be able to gauge how is the community feeling about this specific component of the potential construction, right? And that might help inform how you move forward.
I did,
Also adjust the timeline to whatever your committee wants.
Right.
You know, this is just something we propose based on some assumptions from our previous conversations, but it doesn't have to adhere to the specific.
I'm hearing like this has an opportunity to gain a perspective of how can we teach our community, the perspectives of our providers and people that have that most of that contact with individuals in the system. And the survey could, like, how do we teach them that we recognize as a committee and as providers in the system that this is needed without them feeling like they're making a commitment to something they don't know about. And so I'm wondering if that's what the survey could be, a smaller type of question, like sample, but oriented towards understanding what do they know, what don't they know, what's confusing about this, what are they against, that type of stuff. And then the focus groups are giving us the expertise from the mental health providers, medical and law providers to tell us this is what our people are telling us about the system, and here's what the law enforcement people are telling us about it. And so I'm wondering if that's a route that we could be taking.
I like your point of view, because to me, the survey is getting how people feel. And these could give us some heads up at some points that we need to clarify or address or focus on. And like you're saying, initially it's, I don't know what this is about, but we can get some feeling from people. And I like what you're saying, and we can do more granular later. But this will kind of give us an initial something to focus on or to inquire about.
Yeah.
I like that. Good point.
Would it help you all to have information from like the subject matter expert focus groups to craft the survey questions about values? It could be that part first so that you're a little bit more focused on the survey questions.
Yeah, I could envision it going either direction. So oftentimes the focus groups, the benefit of doing them after, one is that we can utilize the recruitment of the survey for that. But then it also can be utilized, let's say there's some results in the survey that you all become more curious about and would like to dive in a little deeper, we could then embed that in the focus group plan. The alternative, starting with the focus groups, there is certainly benefit in terms of helping it kind of think through, okay, so what questions do we need to ask? But then we'd have to develop a different recruitment strategy.
I'm also curious, just from like input on kind of what you were talking about, like, what are we talking about? Like, how do we talk about this thing? I do see the benefit of having some of those conversations up front to bring to. And so even if it was a little bit longer timeline, then the information that you're having with, you know, your subject matter experts and people that are in the system, then you have the focus groups with the community to talk about, well, this is what's come up. Here's some things here. And then the survey as a wraparound to say, okay, here's some things that people are talking about. And then potentially some of the education piece. Even as, yeah, I mean, it is a system. And so people are going to have to understand a bit of the system in order to understand the needs, the gaps, the challenges, and why we would need whatever it is that's coming out of this, right?
Yeah, I think actually that to clarify, actually 2 points here in this conversation is we could conceivably set it up that we do the focus groups with the targeted group, like the staff, the service providers that you would all assist on the recruitment. We do those on the front end right away, get some insights, and then develop the survey, and then from survey recruit for the more community focus groups would be another alternative.
Any additional questions? So now, my question to the committee members is, what is our temperature? Do we see value in proceeding with some version of this proposal? Seeing.
Yes.
John,
Please.
as one
please.
supervisor, I'd like to hear from the non-supervisors.
Mhm.
Because I think we're gonna take a recommendation from the other people around this table, and so I'd really like to know what the other folks think, because we'll get our own discussion
Mhm.
about this.
Bill, you want to start us off? Let's just go around the horn.
Yeah, John, I'm thinking these are good tools for us to get some initial impressions and get the temperature of what's going on and also to what to address. So I'm always in for surveys and focus groups as a beginning of our discussion. And we need more knowledge from the field of what people are thinking. So I'm open to it, yes.
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
Sorry, Bill, before we
Okay.
move on. In thinking about the focus groups and what you're conducting, is it possible for committee members to get access to those materials so that we can then utilize that as something that we could have our own focus groups? Is that a possibility? Okay, thank you.
Part of our project management work is that we give you status updates and provide data in a timely manner, so you can use it however you see fit.
Right,
And
but
the interview guide as well.
Right.
for the
that's what I'm
focus groups.
talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
the interview guide more than
Yeah.
anything, so that we can, if you're, yeah, exactly, that
All the
actually.
material generated from this project would be owned by your committee. essentially.
Great. That's super helpful. Sorry, please continue.
No, you're good. I'm good. I'm done. Thank you.
Judge?
Well, I mean, if our whole mission statement is to have informed data, and make decisions, then it seems like a no-brainer to me. How do we claim that we're satisfying our mission statement without getting some data somewhere? I think this is probably the best start.
Great. I think I'm particularly interested in the targeted focus groups, just because I think I know surveys are helpful too, but I appreciate data from targeted focus groups because you really get solid info.
I think it's a useful tool, but I agree with Bill that it's a start.
I'm down for both the focus groups and the surveys. I think it's important to have community informed decisions with what this trail looks like, and then also having the focus groups with jail staff, formerly incarcerated. I think that's the two most important stakeholders. So I think it's a good start.
I agree. I think it's a good start for us, especially if we're thinking about how we're gonna talk to communities and kind of get their perspectives and hopefully push them towards a decision that might be helpful for the community, so. I like that.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it will give the eventual decision makers, a real, when people say the community, how the community feels, sometimes it's just people who show up at a meeting and that's not convenient for everybody. So I think it shows that the board is going out to actually, you know, go after how they feel. And I like the idea of collecting the subject matter expert data. I think that's really important to do that in an organized way. I like the idea.
Brett?
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
just think it's-
Thank you.
Wow, that would be new. One word.
Not gonna happen.
That never happened.
And
Okay.
I just think we need to, a couple things. We need to make sure as we're gathering input, one, we're doing this because we have to make sure we're doing everything we can when this is over, that we checked all the boxes in how we're making sure we have buy-in from the public, understand what's important. But also understanding what feedback is, say, related to programmatic things within a facility versus the idea of the facility and the size of it. I think we just need to make sure we distinguish between those two things. And also when this comes in, understand a lot of what we will get from the public will probably be things that are more system involved versus outside the scope of what a jail can and can't do. So I just think we make sure we understand that as we go through, we can kind of suss those things out. But in a day where it's harder and harder to contact people in general. I mean, those of us that run for office, we know that phone calling is even harder than it used to be. Or when I see landlines, I think my mom, as an example, that demographic.
Be careful where you go with
That's why I said, you know, so, and in the younger world, maybe like, I don't know, you know, texting is easier now, but maybe a TikTok is the better way to contact someone. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is outside probably what we would have done 10, 20 years ago and how we are trying to make sure we're doing our due diligence in getting awareness out. But I think it's also going to show, to your point about when I talk, the same questions come up. Well, we have a concept on our website, but we're still talking about what this is going to look like. And the other piece of this is the next item on the agenda too, and the timeline that involves. So no, I'm in, and I'm looking forward to it. There's gonna be a lot to it. We've got to make sure we understand what your buckets of this information.
Thank you, Brad. Aaron Sullivan on Zoom. I just want to acknowledge and share with the rest of the committee members. Aaron is in support if the supervisors determine that this is financially doable and makes sense. Are there any committee members on Zoom who? Yeah, I'm just going to invite the committee members on the Zoom to offer any comments for or against, please.
Sure. This is Melinda Lamb. I just said I support it as long as we kind of explore a variety of options of gathering feedback. I know I can't hear great, but like more of the tech savvy or social media options to get feedback in addition to mail. And then I think even if we don't get a great response, it may start getting the discussion out there that we're going to be eventually going for this. So it just starts the conversations, maybe if nothing else. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is Leslie Carpenter. I would weigh in with some of the same exact comments. I think more information is always good, but I agree with some of the concerns about who you're actually going to end up sampling. So as long as that's able to be measured and reported about, I think that will be helpful.
Very good. Thank you. And now I'd like to address my fellow supervisors. Do you feel like all of you have sufficient grasp of the comments from the committee members this afternoon to move ahead? Very good. Thank you for your presentation. We will be in touch very soon because of the timeliness of this project. We also appreciate your responsiveness given the urgency in our accelerated timetable.
Thank you so much.
Next item on our agenda this afternoon, item D, is an update on Iowa City and Johnson County progress from the sheriff and myself. We continue to make good progress. I just executed an agreement with the city for cost sharing with Shive Hattery driving, but OPN supporting. And so we have taken that as formal notice from the city of Iowa City that they are interested in working together. Sheriff, do you have anything?
Yeah, so Shai sent me a kind of a draft outline of their timeline just yesterday. I got it. It includes starting the kind of the space planning going on from now and through middle of March, wrapping up somewhere within early fall. One of the things that is included is in somewhere between March, April-ish, May. It talks about among other meetings, and one of them is including coming to this group and giving a presentation and update to the CJCC. So it'll be a long process, but it's underway.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any questions, discussion?
Have we identified how like information from the survey or information from focus groups is getting utilized by the? Is there like specific understanding of when that's inserted?
My understanding is that whatever work product we receive from the survey and focus groups would inform us. I don't know that. I hadn't thought about it, frankly, so I'm open to hear how you feel, but I had not thought about there being some way to just immediately shunt that work product into Shive. I think it would just inform our decision making, but if you have suggestions or.
Well, if we're getting input from, people working in the system and working at the jail and working, or, incarcerated folks, and then like our subject matter experts we were just talking about as our first sort of round, I would imagine that input would be included in their design in some way, right?
I think that we clarified though that the next report that we're getting from them isn't supposed to be a building design. It's supposed to just literally be a list of,
that's right.
These are the things that they can share space for. These are the things that can't.
Right. Thank you.
Any additional questions or discussion? Very good. We'll move on to item E, discuss timeline updates. If you have your agenda open, that's page 42 at the very end of the packet. I don't think that I have anything to add here that we're not going to discuss on the next agenda item. Do you, Sheriff?
No.
Any questions about the schedule? Very well, we'll move on to, I'm sorry, go ahead online.
I think it's
Julie. Can you say your voice? I thought you were.
Julie Persons, I'm the county auditor. I just wanted to throw out there, I appreciate you moving the ballot language to next spring, primarily because we'll know by then if there's anything coming out of the legislator that could potentially change anything. I would suggest when you discuss the ballot language in April, you bring it back in May for any changes and then submit it to the office. Once it comes to us, it's better if it is in final form. We are not required to need the language until mid-September. So just keep that in mind with your discussion.
Thank you. That's appreciated.
Yes, please. If I may, I just, Julie, I suggested actually this change to the sheriff and to John, simply because I think having the finalized ballot language earlier helps than as you're trying to persuade voters. You have that solid. That's why I said May, but I think any time that works for you guys is good, but probably the earlier the better so that we know exactly what it will say.
Yeah, I really like the April deciding on it and then finalizing in May and then you
But I think
present it
in-
to us, because then you could talk about it.
Yeah, in terms of the micro, like exactly what day, I think that'll be at the kind of the discretion of the chair, but I think this is a goal
Yeah, yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
Especially if we do end up working together with the city, the agenda language is going to be particularly important because that is going to be complicated and confusing.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a big lift informing the citizenry of what we are asking of them. Any additional questions or comments? All right, item F, discuss jail tour of Dallas and Woodbury County facilities.
Like my last remarks, this will be brief too. No, we're a go. I confirmed with the sheriffs just the other day. They're looking forward to us coming in late March. I'll work on, especially on the Woodbury side of things, making sure they have the stakeholders in the room from their committee and whoever else was involved for us to meet with them. But in the meantime, also, maybe if whoever all is going, send me kind of the things you want to talk about, the important questions. We can putting those into pots and see if they're all the same type of thing we want to cover. So they're, and probably gives them ahead of time, so if they can be ready for our conversation when we're out there.
Would you give us a deadline, please?
What's today? Yeah, end of the month, end of February,
Okay, thank you.
next couple weeks.
Aaron, do you have anything?
Just a couple things on logistics for that trip. So we've received feedback from 18 of you that you're going. So we're a large travel group. I think the sheriff and his team is going to travel on their own, and then the rest of us will probably carpool. So I will be reaching out with a short survey probably tomorrow after Brad signs off on some of the particulars. And we reserved a hotel block as well in Sioux City. So again, just trying to, keep us generally together. And so, yeah, just look for that email to the group of 18 tomorrow. So once I hear back from you, we'll get that sent out.
And Aaron, can we just make a point of making sure no more than 2 supervisors in every vehicle?
Yeah, I already did.
Thank you.
And we will need drivers for carpool, so keep that in mind. I'll make sure I reach out, but that is part of the form that I'm gonna ask you to fill out, if somebody can help us out.
I'll probably travel alone in the smoking car. Any additional questions or discussion? All right, moving on to item G, anything else for the good of the order?
I have a question just from the Iowa City side of things. Is there committees also? Like a subcommittee or anything? Like how is that working on the city side of?
Chief Lincoln are both on the committee, but we want like you.
Right. Okay.
But I'm not aware of any additional coordination on their end at this point. One thing that I do want to just have a very brief discussion about. Rachel, Brad, and I, and a couple other folks exchanged some emails about setting the agendas for these meetings. I think everyone appreciates how expensive these meetings are. Some of us are here on salary. Some of you folks are, thank you, donating your precious time. And I want to be very respectful of that. However, I also wish to balance that cost against good work product, ensuring that all of this investment leads to a successful referendum next year. I don't think any of us, especially the electeds, want our legacy to be another failed referendum. And so I want to balance inviting folks in, hearing diverse viewpoints against the value of everyone's time. I don't know that I am excited at the prospect of trying to come up with some sort of bureaucratic regime. I hope that especially the 3 of us and V can work with administrative staff to just work with folks as these requests come in, understanding that we have 90 minutes once a month. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah, I guess my concern in response was just, I feel like there are folks who have feelings and some information, and there are people who have expertise in data. And I think the people who have feelings and information are better suited for public comment and like community meetings. And the people who have subject matter expertise in data If we want to have presentations like today, or I think, Dr. Lynch wanted to give a presentation on addiction and that kind of thing, I think that's really important. I guess it just. The other thing that we were talking about is more public comment and information than, subject matter experts and data. So I guess, but obviously we can all talk about that.
Well, and I would agree, and to your point, we have, again, 90 minutes once a month, and you know, what are we going to do in that time to help the committee understand? For example, probably next month, maybe the following month, I'd like to take some time with me to talk about jail standards, just sort of as an understanding, like when I talk about jail standards and square footage, here's what those mean, and I really what I'd like to do is lay out on the floor like tape, here's what square footage looks like. That's gonna take 45 minutes in the meeting probably, so then that puts us into June, so we're racing to an end, if you will, and I just want to make sure everybody's time is valued to your point.
I mean, I think to that point, you know, it's not a bureaucratic hurdle necessarily, but instead of content, you know, trying to figure out what is feelings versus data. I think that you could just put, I mean, we do that in our board meetings, we say 15 or 20 minutes, like you just have 20 minutes. And that doesn't necessarily take away from whatever is being presented, but it does give a finite, like, this is how much time you have. And then when we're setting the agenda, we will know, you know, we can only fit 3 or, you know, something like that, given time to have our own agenda and things that we want to do or whatever. That's typically what we strive for. And if need be, we have timers. You know, I would caution against sort of trying to decide what is acceptable for the committee versus, you know, how much time do we have?
Oh, yeah, no, I was more thinking putting things on public comment versus having a presentation and limiting it to whatever, 5 minutes. You know, like you do at a regular.
Sure.
And we can continue these
Yeah.
discussions. I just wanted to give the committee members an opportunity to know that this is a discussion that we have been having. And we continue to work to improve. With that said, is there anything else for the good of the order this afternoon? The next meeting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee is at 3:30 in the afternoon on Thursday, March 13th. It is possible, but I suspect unlikely that we will have moved upstairs by that time. But I would ask that all of you pay close attention to the meeting call for the location when you receive it. The Johnson County Board of Supervisors will meet in formal session at 5:30 this afternoon. Until such time, we stand adjourned.